And we're live. Welcome to you, the viewer. Welcome to the fantastic panel that we have right here. It's the After Dram, and that means it's time to unwind. So put your feet up, grab a dram or two, relax. And as a quick recap, you're going to see this, to our evening, Cheryl, Dave, Drew, Kent, Nick, Sheila, and I have come. We've done a deep dive into the first two lessons of the Complete Whiskey course with the author. No, not just the Complete Whiskey course, a comprehensive tasting school in 10 classes. And we've done the first two classes, or part of it, or as much as we could possibly fit, because we're very talkative people. But let's do another round of introductions really quick. And you're just telling me if you changed your drink. So your name and if you changed the drink, and we're starting with Robin.
Yeah. So I'm now at the Bowmore Classic Cask. This is 11 years old in oak hogsheads.
Nice. Good job. Yeah. Thank you very much. And he's the author of The Complete Whiskey Guide. Buy it for Christmas, you bastards. I keep saying that. Do it. Someone in your life wants that book. Next, Sheila. Cheryl.
No, I'm back again, and I have changed this time now, and I've moved on to the Two Brewers 24, brand new release.
Good job. Thank you very much. Dave, who probably sold her or gave her the 224.
What do you drink? That nice.
Told me where it was.
It's Yukon Dave coming from the basement. All I did was change glasses. So this glass was full. This one is now taking over.
Good.
Well,
you should be double fisting it. Pete with non-Pete. That's what you should be doing. Well, that's what I do. Sorry. Drew, you're
up. Hi. I have switched to a Redbreast 12.
Nice. Cast strength or no?
Not this one. I wasn't allowed.
It wasn't allowed? Okay. He's doing something special tomorrow. Tell us what you're doing tomorrow. Both of you.
Tomorrow, Sheila and I are finishing, or we've got our exams for the Whiskey Ambassador course.
Nice.
And the pallets have to be clean and fresh, and you have to be perfect tomorrow. So I don't.
Sober.
Good for you.
Yeah, sober's the big one.
All right.
No, you shouldn't be sober for that one. So I'm staying in the theme of tonight, and I'm staying Canadian. I'm doing the Rupert's.
And you're saying it's Canadian. Where is it from, Kent?
Eau Claire Distilleries.
And
these
we
are
all
people in Alberta.
Excellent. And what a master distiller they have. She's lovely.
Oh, yeah. Caitlin's amazing. Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Caitlin Quinn, master. You're up, Nicole.
Hey, everyone. I'm back. I am going to my Bunnahabhain samples from an earlier tasting today, so I'm trying to finish those off tonight.
Nice. Thank you very much. And Sheila?
I am still drinking water because I am still nursing.
Oh, that's very sad. But that's okay. Good for you. And
good for you.
And I filled up more of my compass box, and that's okay. Maybe I'll finish the bottle tonight. We're at that point, so we'll see. Laura's shaking her head no, but once the after Dram hits, you never know what's going down. And thank you all. It's been fantastic. We've had a fun night. That first hour went really quick. I had 16 pages of questions on like a 22 font, and everyone might have noticed the massive font. And I got through, I think, 5 questions or something. 3 pages worth. I don't know, but we're good. We're good.
You read this.
I've whittled it away. I've gotten down to the nitty gritty. These are the things I need to know. So panel, you ready? What do you think of this quote? And I had to start with a quote because
always
I like the quote. So the word aging is not entirely accurate, as it implies only length of time, whereas maturation involves time, place, selection, treatment, as well as intangibles like climate or where it's placed in the dunnage warehouse. All right. So all these interactions impart flavor to the whiskey in the barrel. So that's a great quote. I think it's fantastic. I believe we all know this, but I also believe we've all bought bottles based initially, or maybe even mostly at the time, on age statement. I want to know what you guys now that we know stuff a little bit more, What else do you look at when deciding if you're going to buy a bottle? Because we all shop too much. We all spend too much on whiskey, but we still make decisions. What are you looking at to make that decision? It's not just the name and the age anymore. We've all gone beyond that. What else is there?
ABV.
Jump in, whoever wants to.
Yeah, the ABV, coloring, chill filtering,
The barrels.
barrels.
Yeah, the barrels for sure.
Yeah.
The coloring, as long as you know that it's no caramel added, right? But anything else?
You know what? For me, it's changed. It's if I'm pissed off with the marketing level coming out of the company, I stop buying their product because it's getting too expensive, and I refuse to pay the price. And I go, I want to find something more to what I want to be drinking and paying for what I'm drinking.
Okay, can you give us an example? Throw someone under the bus. The after dram doesn't matter.
Okay, Bunnahabhain, I'll throw them under the bus. Deanston, Tobermory, Lacheg.
Why are you mad at them?
Distel has done amazing for marketing.
Yep.
However, the flip side of that is they've now, for me, become the new McCallum. They are overpriced and overmarketed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much.
just
That's the answer I want to hear.
Yeah.
Sheila Drew or Dave? Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it comes down to I try to tune out all the noise and I want to try the product. Like I want to judge for myself. I don't really care what you're telling me. I just want to try it for myself.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, Dave, because the last time you and I met at Vines, you came in and you bought a Bladnock, and we tried the Bladnock there because you heard that it was good online. I can't remember who you heard it from, but
it kept popping up on my Instagram feed,
Okay.
and I kept reading about it. I stopped into the store for I forget what reason. They had it in the store. I talked to Steve, who was the one of the owners. I asked his opinion, which I trust.
Yep.
He said he liked it, so I said, "Okay, I'll buy a bottle."
And I appreciate it because I think the 10 was fantastic. People talk about the 15, which I haven't had yet. I don't know if you have, but the 10 was fantastic. Although their box is crap. The bottle is like 20 pounds and this flimsy little cardboard. It just, it's okay.
The box ripped open on me. The box is in the trash, in the recycle.
Right away.
Yeah, the bottle hit the floor and it bounced.
But it didn't break. It's
no.
heavy with glass. I love it. It feels just massive. Sheila and Drew.
I still, for a lot of, I buy based on distilleries that I like, that I'm known to like. So, I mean, Dave knows I buy Two Brewers because I love Two Brewers.
Yeah, but you've got a big collection behind you. Well, not there, further down. We know your collection. I've got a good collection too. And I'm not always buying things that I know about.
I don't buy age statement. I will buy based on cask finishes, for cask finishes that I know I love. Drew likes different cask finishes than I do, so we will buy cask finishes that he likes that I know that I won't touch the bottle because I don't like it.
All right.
We buy things that we like.
I'm also right now still at a lot of independent bottlers as opposed to the core line from the distillery itself, because you're getting the heart of the juice from the distillery, but you're not, when it's the single cask strength independent bottler, what you have is what you're going to get. And it's
it seems more pure.
Yeah, and when you're finished the 170 bottles in that barrel, that's it. You're never getting it again.
Robin, I'm going to you. You've been a brand ambassador. You got a lot of stuff for free. Dave got a whole bunch of stuff for free from your own things.
I don't get anything for free.
No, you get Two Brewers stuff for free.
I buy it. I pay for it.
He pays for everything.
Stop it. Stop that. What are you doing? Robin, I'm guessing, because I might be wrong now, you got a whole bunch of Compass Box things for free, but at a certain point, you're buying things. And not just word of mouth, because there's people we all trust that say things are great for whatever reason we buy it. What did you look for before you bought it? Not just because it said 24 years old and it was $180. which might do it for you because it seems cheap and it might be good. You're taking
Like
a
a
chance.
bargain.
What were you looking at?
Oh, listen, man. I buy oddball fucking whiskeys. You know, I'm a you know, straight ahead. I buy shit that like, what the fuck is that? You know, I'm gonna buy that. Who the fuck? You know, that's so. You know, so yeah, my whiskey tasting goes back into the 80s.
Okay,
You know,
where it was cheaper.
well, yeah, and there were less. You know, you couldn't find them. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I traveled through all of the classic malts. You know, from the very beginning of the classic malts. I remember when the classic malts was inaugurated. So I kind of go back all through that. So I've kind of like that little personal history.
Okay.
I've got, I have a collection in my cellar that is a total of 1,160 bottles, and of which over 940 are whiskey. Okay.
Good.
So I've got, yeah. And here's the thing. Then I go to like some people that I know, and I feel like an idiot because they have like better whiskeys than I do, right?
We're all the same way. We bring people in our places and they see it. It's like, oh my God, you've got 400 bottles, 500. And then I go to Drew and Sheila and they've got a couple hundred more. And there's always someone out there
right.
got more and better.
And exactly right. So the thing that I never bought into, and this is actually being like a, like a an industry professional. I never bought into age as the sole criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, and this is the thing that John Glazer and I were really kind of like really melded, mind melded on. It's changed in the past 5-7 years. But initially, I never really went to double-aged whiskeys, finished whiskey.
You don't like finished, you like matured.
Well, but it was different. It's different now. Initially, both John and I had come to an agreement that sherry barreled whiskeys, for example, more easily hide the flaws in the spirit, and where a bourbon barrel whiskey, a bourbon barrel whiskey won't. A bourbon barrel whiskey will, if there's something wrong, or if there's a ding in the whiskey, it's going to show up in a bourbon barrel. And by the same effect, if there is a characteristic in that whiskey, it's going to show itself in a bourbon barrel much more so than in a sherry barrel, because sherry is going to actually impose itself more than a bourbon barrel whiskey would. And now we're talking specifically about Scotch whiskeys here, as second and third fill.
That's what we care about. And just to interject, John is the owner of Compass Box.
Yeah, the owner and the chief whiskey maker at Compass Box. And so that's kind of like how he and I kind of like, we had our initial mind meld together, was based on that thinking. Now, I will tell you, in the past 5 years, that's all changed, because, and again, we go back to Jim Swan again. It's the sophistication of the warehouse protocol now, and the blending protocol, and the it's completely different. And we are, hey, this right here, this was the game changer for everything. We're now at the entire industry is at a point now where they share so much more information than they ever did before. And so the level of maturation protocols and wood management protocols, which is now like a fucking science, is different than it was, 20 years ago. Think about it. This is 2020. We wouldn't be having this conversation in the year 2000. You're kidding? We wouldn't have this. We would have none of this. No one cared about whiskey. Whiskey was in the doldrums.
Yeah,
right. It was an old man's
everything else.
Yeah, we were drinking vodka. I mean, people still drinking anything with a teeny in it, you know, and whiskey was like Mad Men shit. It wasn't until Mad Men showed up on television that everyone said, "Oh shit, whiskey!"
I'm back into that. I want it. Yeah,
I want it. And first it was Scotch, you know, and then in the United States, I mean, bourbon just like just shot the moon on that. Yeah. And that's why this goes back to Canadian whiskey. This is where my original manuscript on the Canadian section was that, and we may be jumping ahead here to but was I always
we want on the after dram. That's the good thing about the after dram. We jump.
Canadian whiskey, the way that I had perceived Canadian whiskey's place in the market was it was like this poor soul that was sitting on the back staircase at the bus station, smoking a cigarette and like looking off into the distance and wondering why everybody was like, having a good time, and then this poor motherfucker was just like, right. And then suddenly Canadian whiskey like shows up and someone shows up at a party and it's a big lawn party and you look over in the distance and there's a table and there's a person standing there at the table. Oh man, well that was the big marker. There's a person standing at the table and everyone is gathered around that person and this person is vivacious and this person is like entertaining and he's the star of the show, and that's Canadian whiskey. So Canadian whiskey had kind of come that in that arc. And yeah, 40 Creek was, obviously, John Hall was like, remarkable
we always sold a lot of money though. We always sold a lot of whiskey, but it was always the cheap whiskey. You go in, you get the shot for $1
that was the problem. And when Don and I had lots of conversations about this and Bill Ashburn actually he buttressed this as well, is that Canadian whiskey got sold down the river from a corporate level, and therefore dumbed it down. And then you guys never got you in Canada, you never got the 1/11th that we did, right?
Yeah.
Because the 1/11th, the 9.09% rule was actually enacted for American imports. Now, and I tell people, now think about the logic of this. Okay, here's the logic. The American government says if you put up to 9.09% of something that's American in your whiskey,
there's the tax guy.
Then when you sell it back to us, we'll give you a break on the fucking excise tax. The tax man, right? Right? The tax man. It's like, what kind of thinking is that? What the fuck kind of thinking is that? I tell you what, you take your product, dumb it down and adulterate it, sell it back to me, you'll get a break. Who fucking thinks about that, right? But that's essentially what happened. Now, I grew up in Pittsburgh and I grew up on VO and Canadian Club, and Canadian Club was the upgrade, and when you went to a bar, and I was 16, 17 years old, and you get into the VFW hall, and the bartender will, you got enough balls to come in here and ask for some whiskey, I'll pour you some whiskey, and then he'll pour you a whiskey, a shot of whiskey in a shot glass, and it was Canadian Club, and they called it rye. So we started to understand that all Canadian was rye. We had no idea what rye was. We didn't even know that rye was a grain, right? It was just called rye.
Yeah.
Right. And so this was the whole background of that. Dolph, am I going off on a tangent here from the question that you first asked?
We all do.
So all of these whiskeys, I mean, they all got dumbed down. The low end, bottom shelf Calverts, in the jug handles and everything like that. And that's what's been so wonderful about to see what's been happening since John Hall. I mean, John Hall was pretty much, and I mentioned it in the book. He's the guy that everybody spun their head around. Said, Canadian whiskey, really? And it was 40 Creek, and
Crown Royal in Texas, same thing. They love Crown Royal, but the John Hall for everyone else, and he did, and they bought him out, and he made a shitload of money.
He did, of course he did.
So good for him.
Yeah,
but
Crown Royal, and so Crown Royal is interesting, right? So Crown Royal was another idea of an upgrade in whiskey because he had that really cool, sack, that it came in, right? And so obviously that's expensive shit,
that velour sack. That's right. Velour. The Alberta.
Yeah. Okay. So this is cool. You'll love this idea. Yeah.
Yep.
So my neighbor across the street from me, who he has a company that it's a clean out service for buildings and companies. So like when you're ready to actually evacuate the building, he brings in a big 9-yarder, and then you just dump shit in that. So he finds all kinds of stuff, right? And he knocks on my door one day. He goes, "Here, I thought you might be interested in this." And he gives me a bottle of unbroken, tax sealed 1959 Crown Royal. All right. So I got this bottle and I'm not going to open it. Right. I'm not going to open it. I said, "Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. Oh my God." Right. And I sit it there. And then Jim Murray comes out, a couple of years ago and proclaimed the Northern Harvest Rye Crown Royal is the best whiskey in the world. Right. $29.95 a bottle.
We all bought it. I know.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Right.
Well,
I tell you,
you all tried it. I know you tried it. Don't tell me you didn't try it.
I never did.
You lying bastards. You all tried it. I know you did.
Never did.
Well, I've got probably 4. I bought one for every one of my kids in case it was, and it was always the first run. Sorry, Robin. I'm in there. I'm there with you.
So I did buy it.
Not in this house.
I did buy it, and then I've got them, and I didn't open it, right? Because I figured, okay, well, yeah, I'll buy it, and let's see what the Jimmy Murray thinks. And so I had them there for a couple of years, and then about 3 years ago, I opened them both up side by side, and this was again, I'm doing the research part of the book.
This is your 1950s bottle with the Northern Harvest Rye. You went side by side.
1959 and the Northern Harvest Rye, which was what, 2016?
Something like that. It was a while ago.
Like that, right? So it's about 60 years, right? And I tasted them side by side. What do you think I found?
I hope you found a big difference, and I'm hoping the 1954's one was oilier and a little bit dirty, but a nice feel to it. That's why I'm hoping. What'd you get?
Well, here's what I found. And this was amazing. I found, you're right, that 1959 was like down and dirty and rich and deep, right? But the Northern Harvest Rye had all of this top note stuff that was absolutely fantastic. It was fruity, it was lively, it was vibrant. But here's the most important part. In the middle, unmistakably Crown Royal. 60 years later, it was unfucking mistakably the same whiskey. And so now I'm on the phone with the guys up at LaSalle, and I'm talking to 2 of the blenders in the lab up there.
Okay.
And I told them this. I said, so I did this, and how the fuck did that happen? And they told me, and that's the Seagram's. It was the Seagram's methodology.
Yeah.
The Seagram's methodology held 60 years. Think about that. What the hell? 60 years. This had all the top note. This had all the bottom note, and right in the middle, unmistakably, you can blind taste anybody on that.
Okay.
And it was
Their
still
nose,
it was
7
Crown
years
Royal.
of train.
Yeah, and Gavin talked to us about that. The training they go through at Crown Royal is pretty intense, and they have a lot of people, and they fire a lot of people, and they bring a lot of people in, so they get the noses, right?
But not only that, it's their library. It's their library of samples. They have practically every barrel that's ever been distilled in somewhere in that library. So LaSalle, I was invited up to LaSalle. Have anybody been to LaSalle?
Well, I've been to Montreal.
I'll tell you what.
I was born there, but I never went to the distillery when I was 10.
I've got an open invitation, so if I go, I'm bringing you guys with me, right? Right? Right?
I speak French. I'm good for us. We'll bring you in there. It's all good.
I need a translator. Right? This,
and this is the other book from Davin. I just got to put that up because I plug everything.
Yeah.
Davin's there. We got to put that up there. We're loving Davin. Buy this for Christmas too.
Yeah,
you bet. Books for Christmas. You
Awesome.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, man. So it was the Seagram's methodology. The Seagram's methodology, which we here in the United States, we don't think about that with Four Roses, but the Seagram's. There's Davin. Davin, loving that.
There's the colorfulness we talked about, right? The color.
Loving that sweater.
Many conversations about his shirt colors.
Sorry, Rob. Let's get a little bit silly here. It's good. All right,
I've got a picture of him last year. This time last year, he and I and 16 other authors were invited down to Kentucky to the Copper and Kings distillery, which is a brandy distillery in Kentucky, right in Louisville.
All right.
And Joe Herron, who is the owner, he just sold it in the intervening time. Joe Herron invited us all down, and he created something called Book Stock. So he invites, me and Davin and Dave Wondrich and Jim Meehan and Fred Minnick and Frank Chiaffa.
So the guy's been around for a while. Okay, we're good. Yeah.
All these guys, they all been around. Had all been around. Amanda Schuster, and everyone had written either cocktail books or spirits books. And we came down for a 3-day confab. It was absolutely fantastic, right? And we were going to do it again this year, if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah.
And so at the end of it, they took us through a tour of their distillery, and at the very end of the distillery was they had a big rack of all of these, and they do some crazy experimental shit. So they had a whole rack of barrels, and then they offered us, here's a bottle, here's a label, tap whatever you want, right? And I've got a picture of Davin underneath a barrel.
We need that picture.
We need that picture, Robin. That'll go a long way with me. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I need that. So he was doing a Homer Simpson underneath the barrel.
I'm waiting for the moment when I need that picture.
Oh, you're not sharing it. Okay.
We need a copy of that as well.
I'll get it to everybody if he shares it. All right, I'm getting back. I've got 3 questions I want to get done. I want to do this because this is your tasting notes, which actually, no, I'm not there yet. So that's the next one. No, I'll go to that now. So your cultural and flavor heritage makes an impact on your ability to perceive flavor. So you said that, and it's a quote. I could actually get it because I've got all these quotes up here. I might as well. Your cultural.
It's a quote. My quotes are being used against me.
No, it's good. Not against you. For you, buddy. Now, I agree with this, and I have to say I love the cultural heritage that creates the tasting notes when you were talking about Lagavulin. So here it is. Here's your Lagavulin. It tastes like I'm sitting in a dumpster behind the infirmary after the Battle of Helm's Deep. So for those of us that love Tolkien, man, that was fucking poetry. I loved it. And the translation which you gave us on the side's fantastic.
I love the translation.
Yeah.
It was frightening. Like there had been a war in my mouth. There was a strong medicinal odor mixed with old moss and decaying leaves in a forest, and maybe some other things too. It was also magical, like it didn't exist in the same world I lived in. We're on the same. I love this. It's good. But this last part, it was ancient and primal, and I think this is the line. It made me grow up a little bit. I like that a lot. So and wait, I got another quote. That's a tasting note. It was mine. And it was personal. When I read it today, years later, it still means something to me. And that was one of my favorite parts of any of the books. So if I go to the 6 books we've done, that's something I hold on to as one of my favorite parts. I loved it. I quoted half your page. I'm sorry. The whole half the page. So no one has to buy the book for that half the page. But buy it for the rest.
Give it away for free, Dolph. Jeez.
That's right. My questions to the panel. I know I've been buttering up Robin, and then I go to the panel. It doesn't make sense why I'm doing it. Panel, do you use something to help you make tasting notes? So is there a tasting wheel, because he's got a tasting wheel as well, or a chart that you refer to that helps you pinpoint flavors? And if there isn't something tangible that you hold on to or you can see, what else do you use to help you kind of pull out those flavors, panel? And some people say this, Dr. Gum, because we've been talking to him about it, and he's got it. But I've got one from Westland that I was using for a long time.
The Westland is excellent. The Westland's wheel is excellent.
Yeah. And so anyone else, have you used tasting wheels to help yourselves taste it? Now, I've also got the other one that goes from PD to, I don't know, in the top, bottom. I don't know. What do you think?
We had
go ahead.
tasting chart made by a friend of ours, Dave Parker, years ago, and it was the pretentious tasting chart.
I love it.
I love that.
Pretentious phrase generator. That's what it was.
Pretentious phrase generator. So it was just like synonyms of everything, and then you just plugged it in, and it just.
Wait, Drew, where can I get this?
I will dig out a copy and get it to you.
Oh my God! Please.
So,
Sheila, you're going to have to give it to all of us because of what we do. We share. Not just your favorite person on the panel now. You have to give it to everybody.
I have to say, I'm quite enjoying this page as well.
I've got a question for that page, Robin. You don't talk about port on that page at all. And I've got a tasting on the 8th of January that has port. I need to have a general note that I'm going to come out with port because he had that of all the different finishes. And I love that page, by the way. I just needed port.
Yeah, again, that actually came down to editing. That actually just came down to editorial decisions. So port. So what's port? So it's plummy, right?
Yeah.
It's deep, rich bottom note. It's port finish. Yeah.
I've got 9 of them that I'm doing. So you get plums, and you know what? I know you don't like the Christmas cake analogy, but that comes out for me too. I know it's more of a sherry thing, but if all 9 of them I've got.
And here's the thing, because Americans don't know what Christmas cake is.
Oh, really?
We have no idea. We have no idea what that means.
Oh, wow.
We can send you something we don't
British
want.
Heritage or something coming in, because all of us have had like really horrible Christmas cake. I'm sure lots.
Now we have had fruit cakes.
Same thing.
A bit different.
And
heavier spice with it.
Maybe it's the same thing, but and again, fruitcake is from another generation as well.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at tasting notes again, and again, I'm a sales guy, so who am I talking to? I'm actually talking to millennials more than anybody else, because and if there's anything that a millennial doesn't understand, it's a fucking Christmas cake or a fruit cake.
They're not eating it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. We're good. I agree completely. The rest of the panel, though, and Robin, a lot of you have led presentations. A lot of us, all we've done our own presentations. Have any of you used any type of chart effectively? Because I've used it, and unless the group I'm with, and it depends on the size too, you're dealing with 30, 40 people, it's never going to work. You're dealing with 6 to 12 or something like that. Maybe they'll get into it. Have any of you used those to try to make people taste things?
No.
I don't like to use charts because I find it too much overshadowing, where it's too suggestive to people, and then people then fixate on what ideas you planted in their heads.
Right.
It tastes like rubber. Oh yeah, exactly.
On the other side,
But what kind of rubber?
Burnt rubber on a hot street.
Subjective, right? Yeah.
But on the other side of that, until Dr. Don's tasting, I had seen those wheelie spike charts for everything from cigars to whiskey to whatever. I had no clue how to read them until his class. Like they were.
Came to one of my tastings ever. That's what would have been good.
That's where I think Don did something brilliant. Was he reversed the importance of that order? Because what everybody started out with was the chemical congener makeup, and then they went out to the subjective, and Don reversed the entire thing, and that made perfect sense. Don's wheel,
I thought so.
Don's wheel was revolutionary because it really just kind of reset the thinking on that. You're right.
And he's pretty happy with it too. So I'll give him. He promotes that quite a bit. So Panel and Robin, I'm going to change it, but it's almost the same thing. So with all this information at our fingertips, does it make a tasting, nosing of a whiskey more disingenuous? Because Kent, you had that table that told you what you're supposed to taste with this type of finish or this type of maturation. If we know the wood, how it was matured, how long it's been matured, where it's been matured in the dunnage warehouse, is it disingenuous, or does it actually change our perception because we think we know something and that's what we make ourselves taste?
Yeah, I would say it would be suggestive at that point.
I don't know. We tend to know more information now. We're gripping onto the information. We've seen it a lot. Does it change how we taste it? Or do we try to blanket that memory a bit and actually taste it? Nick, what do you think? I haven't heard from you for a while.
I think for me, it's a bit of a pet peeve. This is, to me, a lot of marketing. It's telling me what I'm supposed to taste. And I had a presenter way back say, if you've never had fresh mangoes and somebody gives you that tasting note, you won't understand what fresh mangoes taste like, because what you get here in Canada is not a fresh mango. And that struck a point for me. I've never had a fresh mango off a tree. So when somebody says that tasting note, it's their interpretation of it. So those wheels are interpretations and they're generalizations of what somebody thinks you should be tasting. And I think it goes back to Robin's comment. Our taste is all that culture, our upbringing. That impacts how we interact with whatever's in front of us, whether it be a liquid, it be a food, whatever the case.
Yeah.
So Nicole, when you do SMWS tastings and they talk about trifle or something from England, you're getting a little bit angry at that point, right? It's like,
yeah, that's all bullshit.
It's like, fuck.
Yeah, how many SMWS labels I've gotten angry at? You know,
what the fuck is this, you bastard? All right, here we go. What is this? No one knows what this is.
Yeah. I like what Robin said in here. Like he mentioned marzipan. I still don't know what that tastes like, and I hear it every once in a while. What?
I'll give you some marzipan. It's fairly tasteless to me, anyways.
Disaronno.
It's
almond flavor. It's almond flavor. You know, but
it's an almond.
If you say almond, then I understand a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Right.
It's not like the actual taste of an almond. It's like taste of almond that's been made into, I don't know. I'm gonna say
almost like almond juice.
Tasting almond.
Yeah.
Almond.
And
I
Robin,
don't use.
Cheryl wants to be devil's advocate here.
I just
Oh.
want to add a little something to this. Honestly,
Yes,
because I'm still very much trying to grow and learn my palate. I think sometimes like things like these flavor wheels spur my thoughts to different things that I wouldn't have even thought to say is a tasting note. So I like the fact that those pieces are out there because it makes me think more about different things that I wouldn't have maybe thought about to include as a thought.
That's absolutely legitimate. That's absolutely legitimate. And think about that. The upper wheel, the upper tier of a tasting wheel is essentially just a subjective articulation. It's a subjective articulation, right? Now, what Don did was actually, again, revolutionary, because he said, okay, there's 3 areas in which flavor comes from, right? It's wood, it's yeast, and it's grain, right? And then he kind of went from there. But the traditional tasting wheels prior to that were based on those articulated flavor notes. And the thing is, and now, sure, so you come from a wine world, so you already have an articulation about wine. And that's why I said that, like, if you did a Venn diagram, you'd see an 80% crossover in tasting notes between wine. Yeah, and wine and whiskey, absolutely. I mean, you're going to leave the phenols off, in wine, obviously, but yeah, it's and when I introduced that whiskey wheel in the book, I introduce it with notes on the right hand side saying, here's how to read this. Don't focus on the top tier. So the one that I chose was from the Scotch Whisky Testing Institute, which is sort of like the definitive wheel for whiskey in Scotland. And it's the one that's actually scientifically, it's scientifically backed, and that's in chapter 2, and in class 2. And so
55 for you bastards.
I got it.
And I use that as an example. You remember, who am I talking to in the book? I'm talking to people who are looking at a lot of this as somewhat exotic. So here's the thing that I learned as a brand. There it is right there. Yeah. So the thing that I learned as a brand ambassador, and I mentioned this in the book, that when I've tasted over 10,000 people on whiskeys, right? So I mean, I've had that many interactions, and the thing that comes back over and over and over again was this apology. 80% of the people that I've tasted on whiskeys apologized to me that they weren't connoisseurs. And so that tells you a little bit about how people think about taste and flavor. Now, there's a blog called the Whiskey Wash. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Yeah, we got it.
Well, I wrote an extensive article on the Whiskey Wash from an American perspective, and I think this holds for Canada as well, about our relationship to flavor and why we think about flavor in the way that we do. And the way that Americans think about flavor the way that we do is because it's not part of our heritage to think about flavor, because that's not the American mythology.
Okay.
When you think about the Americans, right, the United States Americans, we were based on a pioneer ethos of rejecting anything that was considered effete or elite. And we were out there struggling against nature. And you think about the Canadians, they're the exact same way, right? Pushing, out of Eastern Canada into the West. Same thing. Pushing against nature, where food is rare, it is scarce, and
all about survival.
And it's sustenance only. Absolutely, it's sustenance. I mean, how many of us here have grown up and say, eat your fucking food and shut the fuck up and get the hell out of the house, right? That's how we all grew up, right? Everyone's nodding their head, of course.
You're not leaving the table till you eat those goddamn gross peas.
Yeah. Right? right?
I'm not. I'll stay here till breakfast.
Yeah. And there are kids starving in India, And, but when you think about that, so our relationship to flavor was sustenance and survival only. To think about flavor, to elucidate about flavor, to talk about it is completely foreign to the American concept. And then you had, like, for example, in the 20th century, you had the deprivations of World War I, followed by, right, the Great Depression, and then followed by World War II. When look, prior to COVID, I'd go to, like, I'm in, like, top-notch restaurants and bars all the time, and part of my business, and I'm at the bar ordering, and this blows my mind, ordering bone marrow, right, for $18 a shot, right? And thinking in the back of my mind, my mother telling me when we had no other food to eat, we would eat bone marrow because we grew up.
And if no one knows this,
There's the dirty 30 for you. Yeah.
So I wrote this article based on that, and it was kind of based on I alluded to it in a book, but again, what I did for Whiskey Wash is I wrote all of the stuff that didn't fit into the book. And I had a conversation about 6 years ago with Shinji Fukuyu, and Fukuyu-san is the chief blender at Suntory.
Yep.
And I was brought together with him with a couple other people, and he wanted to talk to somebody about whiskey who knew a lot about whiskey, but it wasn't really brand oriented. And so I was invited to a little cocktail session at a cocktail bar in New York City. And we had a lovely evening and talking, and we talked about, this is right after Jim Beam and Suntory came together and created Beam Suntory.
Yeah.
What's that?
For Legend.
No. This was well before that. No, this is actually when the two companies came together, and so he was on a press tour of the United States, and he said this absolutely remarkable thing to me that I'll never forget, and really kind of like informed my thoughts on this. He goes, I've been all over the United States, and I'm on a press tour, and Shinji had, was with Morrison Bowmore, and so he was very Western oriented, so he understood. And he goes, American, I've been interviewed by Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and all these bloggers and everything, and Americans are very, very smart people, and they've asked me all these questions about grain yield and still size and water content and all this. He said, not one person asked me about flavor.
Okay.
And when he said that, he was genuinely curious that not one person, and think about this, this is the chief blender for Suntory. And this what he does is creates flavors, and not one person asked him about his job, right? And so that's what got me to thinking and got me to exploring and got me to try to understand what was the connection between Americans or North Americans and flavor. But because we are so far apart from it, so that when we come now to this whole whiskey revolution, and we're being now inundated with a whole bunch of different flavors, what we end up doing is we end up defaulting back to the same quote unquote continental elitist vocabulary. And what Westland did, which is really what I admired, what Dolph had mentioned before, what Westland did was they created a completely American tasting wheel based on things that we understand here. That's why so the marzipan and the orgeat and the and the Christmas gone. Bung cloth. I mean, who the hell's ever smelled bung cloth, right? And and that's what was interesting. So that's why I typically avoid tasting notes in all of my classes. I typically avoid tasting notes unless I get like blank stares and crickets coming back from people. Then I'll start throwing some words out. But I want to hear what people are thinking about how they make the interaction between what they taste and the words that they use. That's why I like if you ever use the tasting stars. The tasting stars.
What do you mean?
So the tasting star is just a graph. It's just a graph, and in the center, in the center, and then there are just lines that come out from the center. Yeah,
yep.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Great.
So this is my very first one I ever used.
Yeah, in the Whisky Journal. Yeah. So, and the tasting stars are really wonderful for people who are not. Perfect.
I'm trying to make it so it can focus on it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So the great things about that is, like, a lot of people aren't really verbally oriented. They may be more visually oriented, and then the tasting star makes more sense to them. You know. So
and that's how I started.
I
needed the visual, and Dave did the same thing. Dave's a very visual guy too. I had to go through this thing, and that's how I did for my first 2 years. It's all this thing, and going back to it's fantastic because I could just look at it and I get a perception right there just from what I drew.
Here's my peaty whiskeys. Here's my fruity whiskeys. Here's my spicy whiskeys. Here's my balanced. It's great. It's brilliant, and it's a great way for people. So some people are visually oriented, and some people are more, vocabulary oriented, and it's a great way to kind of like balance it out. But the whole idea of taste is just so damn funny. I didn't know what lemongrass was until 10 years ago, right? I grew up, believe it or not, you can tell by my name Robinson, but I grew up in a Middle Eastern background, right? It's so obvious, right?
It's so obvious.
Yeah. And
all right, guys.
So I'm really, I'm really.
This is my wife telling me to get on to the next subject. That's okay. Go ahead, Robin. My wife gets her own way in this house. She doesn't have to get her way in your house. That's all right. Lemongrass, finish it off, buddy. Don't give in to my wife. She's got this power.
Hey, but let me tell you, I can tell you the 4 flavors of feta cheese that you can't, because I grew up with that.
You probably could.
Yeah.
You know what, Robin? I have to give in to her. Here I go. I'm just going to read my question. Here we go. You ready? I've skipped through like 12 questions to get to this. So page 10, for those of you that have the book. If you don't have it, buy it for Christmas. Terroir is defined by dictionary.com as the environmental conditions, especially soil and climate, in which grapes are grown and that give a wine its unique flavor and aroma. And you stick with wine here for a purpose. But can terroir be applied to whiskey? Robin, you devote a couple pages of this and a great visual it's called The Distance from Earth to Bottle. And Nick actually had this on a post on Instagram. She actually had that post where she went from beer to wine to the whiskeys or distillates on the side. I love it. And I've heard your position on a couple Instagram live sessions. Can you share, please, your position with the rest of us on terroir? And keep in mind that you're the one that told us just recently that people have done studies where they're doing minute changes to something and seeing a difference in flavor. So keep that in mind as you say this to us. Yeah, that's the one, Ken.
There's a chart, yeah. So the whole idea is terroir is the wrong word.
Yeah.
To indicate individuality. The word is provenance. So now you have to balance out both of the words. If whiskey has terroir, then how can wine have terroir? Because that's really where the word comes from. And the word comes from Mark Rainier. Let's not misunderstand this. Mark Rainier is the person who really popularized the word terroir. Now, who was Mark Rainier? Mark Rainier was a wine negociant who had a brilliant idea to open up the Bruichladdich distillery on Islay that had been closed for 20 years. And when he did that, he brought over a guy who was, grew up in the Bowmore distillery and who was a native Iliac, a guy named Jim McEwen.
Yeah.
And together, what they said, we said, we want to actually create the whiskey that is indicative of this area, and indicative of this area to Mark Rainier meant terroir, because that was where he came from. He came from wine. Now, here's the differentiation. And that's why I put the chart there. From the ground into the glass, there are maybe 4 conditions that change for wine.
Here, Kent, put up that the chart, and I'll focus on you. Go ahead there, Robin. You keep talking. I'm just going to focus on Kent for a second.
Yeah, right. So there are, there's grapes, and then there's the harvest of them, and then you press them, and then you ferment them, and then in some cases you're going to age them, and then you put them in a bottle, right? And so terroir makes perfect sense because I can still pick up the natural influence on a natural, and we're just going through a fermentation. But once we get into distillation, think about what distillation is. It's the chemical change. You're changing the chemical composition. All you have to do is look at Don's chart, look at any of those charts. You're changing the chemical composition of this into this through pressurized heat and the intermediation of copper. Because what's happening inside of a still is that you are scraping off, because what is a distillate but a solvent, and it scrapes off the inside of the copper.
Cleans.
And then and this is even before you get to the cuts. And then you get to the cuts, and then you actually cut it a different way, right? And then you put it into a barrel. How many terroirs can we have? So my whole point of this is once you start actually cooking this under pressure with heat, anybody who's been through high school chemistry knows that you are making molecular change. If you're making molecular change, how can you claim terroir? You can't do that. It is provenance. Provenance, again, and I offer the definition in the book as well, is things that relate to one specific area, which means not only the raw materials, the grain, grinding the grain. Remember, so when you grind the grain, you use a Porteous mill or you use a hammer mill. You got 2 different grinds. You actually have now 3. You're looking at grist, hull, and powder as a way to actually affect the flavor. That's right in the very beginning, right? Can peat be a terroir? Well, sure, peat can be a terroir. But then once it goes through the cycle of everything else, then it becomes part of the provenance, right? So if I was actually eating peat from Laphroaig and eating peat from Orkney, I would taste 2 different types of dirt. But once I actually take that through the cycle of chemical decomposition and recomposition, my claim to terroir is now empty. And the analogy that I use is this. I have a chair and I have a table. Now, what are the similarities? Well, both of them are grounded to the floor. Both of them have a flat surface. Okay. In both ways, you can put something on them. But if I start calling a chair a table and a table a chair, I have actually disrupted my entire understanding of what language is. And that's the whole thing about terroir versus provenance, is that terroir belongs in wine because it is naturally fermented and it's romantic. It's a romantic notion, right? But this is a manufactured good. This is fermented, this is manufactured. That's two different things. So you can't have one be the other. Now, all of this science gobbledygook that they're actually producing now, I will tell you this. Let's go back to the understanding of what is scientific methodology. Scientific methodology that's been around since the 17th century tells you that you have to strip away all of the preconceptions that you have about a phenomenon in order to assess the phenomenon accurately. If I am testing for terroir, guess what? I can fucking find it.
Good. And
I can find it.
I believe you.
If I'm testing for it. Yeah, shit. Yeah, here it is because I'm looking for it.
And you can find the differences. We're going to develop this, but Nicole really wants to talk about this. I can tell because she's leaned forward a couple times. Really wants to talk. So we're going to put Nicole on. What do you think, Nicole?
I have actually a problem with you using the word providence.
Okay.
Oh,
Holy shit! What's going on? What?
Well, provenance is defined as a record of ownership of a work of art or an antique used as a guide to authenticate or to define the quality of the item.
That's one, and you're correct, absolutely. But that is only one definition of provenance.
But it talks about the defining structure. You don't talk about a defining structure of provenance when you use it as a term for whiskey in the book.
But I am, because the provenance now, the defining structure is the size of the still, okay, the length of fermentation, the time used for distillation, and most importantly, and this is critical, the savoir-faire. This is a word that we don't really typically think about in grain-based distillation, but the French know about it. Savoir-faire. Savoir-faire is the idea of what the distiller brings to the act of distillation. And so all of that is really what, in the definition of provenance that I'm using, that all fits inside of there.
But you can't measure savoir-faire.
I'm sorry?
You can't measure savoir-faire.
No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you're absolutely right. But so maybe you're taking that definition down to a level that for me it may not apply. You're taking it down to, yeah, but I think you and I are actually agreeing on the exact same thing, because there are things that are unmeasurable here. They're absolutely unmeasurable, right? It's because if Dolph distills it and I distill it, we're going to actually look at it we're going to make the cuts differently. We're going to do all this stuff differently. You're absolutely correct. And that's why the term provenance becomes more of an apt descriptor. And I'm not saying it's the perfect descriptor, but of the words that we have out there to describe what comes out and then into a bottle, provenance is, for me, a closer descriptor than terroir is.
All right. And you know what? I'm gonna add to that, because I'll add what you said.
Well, the same as artisan skill. So yeah, artisan skill is part of it. That's just it. So think of all of the different parts of it. Artisan skill is that maturation, the cuts, all of that is part of it. That's why terroir doesn't work. And maybe provenance is not the correct word, but it's a better word for me than terroir.
Let's use either word. Let's do either one. It really doesn't matter. And we'll go back to
Dolph. No, Dolph. Whoa. It does matter.
Yeah.
It does matter.
Let's make this whatever helps you understand the difference between one distillery and another.
Okay.
Whatever that word is.
Provenance.
Now, let's do with what you were talking about with Buffalo Trace.
Hey,
now,
I wrote the fucking book.
Buffalo Trace, and thank you very much for that information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It helps
I'll
me
bow out
understand
now.
what someone's being really scientific and really trying to change things, and that's what I'm trying to do. So scientifically, as much as we could, if we could recreate every aspect of the distilling process of aging, if possible. I know it's really hard, but
Absolutely.
you change one element at a time: the grain, the water, the peat bog. Would you concede that it's possible to tell, just like Buffalo Trace did, a difference between one and another in their 6 different areas?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something. So if that's
Sure.
okay, and we agree with there's a difference and we can make a difference, or we could possibly taste a difference maybe between one region and another, which is the real romanticized notion.
But it's not regionality. Remember what we're doing. Remember what we're doing is that man is, or woman is, manipulating.
Yeah.
And once you get into scientific manipulation, you have negated the whole idea of terroir.
Yeah.
This is manipulation. And that's why, for example, you have to have a license to distill. You don't need a license to make wine. The reason you need a license to distill because you are in charge of a manufacturing facility. And when you manufacture, you are changing the elements completely in order to create something else. That's the huge difference here. This is a manufacturing facility. There's no distillery in the world that is not a manufacturer.
And I'll concede that right away. Yeah. I believe that. And Robin, why do you think people like me want to believe that that terroir or provenance
it's romantic
possibility? Why do we think someone like me wants it?
It's totally romantic.
Yeah.
And marketing.
I am a romantic at heart. I believe
it absolutely is marketing. And here's my position. Here's the end. Here's the be all and end all of my position against it. It is disingenuous to the consumer.
Oh, okay. And
So,
I'm never disingenuous to the consumer. Go ahead, Dave.
When I was a young sales guy, one of the guys told me, he said, best story wins. And I relate that now back to listening to all these guys say, well, we use the grain that's growing right on our property, or it's plowed by the local horses. And I think, yeah, but how does the product taste? Like, I don't want to hear the story. I want to try the product.
If the best story wins, if it's, first of all, it has to be based on fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And because I love the whole
convince
idea.
people that it's fact right now. Trump is trying. He's got half of your country believing something.
Well, and if you're and Dolph, thank you, because if you're looking for the indicator of the best story wins, right?
He's doing well.
But the best story is based on fact, and then it takes the facts and just elevates it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't change. It just elevates.
But when they talk about the grain is locally harvested by a team of horses, I'm still thinking, well, that's a great story.
Down the street, and he's a great.
How does it taste? That's all I really care about. How does it taste?
As long as it's back
are we talking about whiskey or beer?
Both.
Okay, because well, actually, it's 2 different things. Because beer, again,
but still, the grain is raised on one distillery. The grain is grown in a field and used by a different brewery. So,
and that's wonderful, and that's provenance, As soon as you start making chemical change, you've lost terroir and you've moved into provenance.
But tell me where
anyone says anything else, I want last words from everyone. Then we're going to go in the after Dram. We'll say whatever the hell we want. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go in the reverse order. So Nicole,
and this is why I put the argument here. The reason I put that argument, and I had to fight to my editors to get that argument in the book. This is the exact reason I put that argument in the book, because this is the type of discussion that needs to be engendered. Absolutely.
No, I agree. Yeah. All right, Sheila, your last words.
Okay. My last words. Just following up
on first to give us last words.
Discussions. I agree with everybody. It's romantic, and a good story makes people feel good about themselves when they spend more money on a bottle.
That's I agree with that. Nicole, you're up.
I still have some points I want to talk about Providence, so that'll be later. But it's, to me, a lot of marketing.
I agree. Kent, you're up. Kent, you're up.
Yeah.
No, we'll get you to Kent. My wife's not letting me do it. Kent, you're up.
How do the Americans say it? I plead the fifth on this conversation.
Oh, it doesn't have to be about the conversation. It could be about the whole night, buddy.
I'm gonna say that we should maybe move this for another week and have just a 1 hour session on tarot.
I would rather drink the fifth than plead the fifth. So that's
I'm sorry. I had been laughing. We had to mute ourselves because we were laughing so hard. This is my book.
This is serious. I'm cutting you off. Drew.
I've really enjoyed this one. Looking forward to the next 5 weeks. This has been a blast.
Thank you, buddy. I agree. Yukon Dave.
It's been a great book. I really enjoyed reading it as much as I've read. But there was a statement earlier, and they talked about aged and matured.
Yeah.
As soon as I read that, I thought, well, I wasn't sure if I actually was matured. I've aged a lot, and boy, that one really hit home. I like that one.
You are
Dave, I can sympathize with you, man. I think we're in the same generation.
I'm just an older kid, that's all.
You're our last one, Cheryl. Well, before the host.
Back to follow. No, this has been a blast, and I thoroughly, like even terroir, I thoroughly enjoyed hearing Robin's explanation of it. It's just, you look at it from a totally different angle when you get it from somebody else. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is going to be a great 5 weeks. Everybody needs to be here and join us, and you need to buy this book.
Done. All right, Robin, you're up.
All right, man. Hey, look, this is great because this is why I wrote this book. Hey, look, I wrote this book.
You did. You're the author. You're the expert. Yes, you are.
And here's the other thing: there are no experts. I'm the first person to plead that I'm just smoke and mirrors. Okay, yeah. I'm just smoke and mirrors. But what I do love, and this is something I've loved ever since I was a little kid. I love an argument based on real things, like thesis, antithesis, and thesis, right? So very Kierkegaard. So I love hearing the other side of anything that I say. That to me, that is fuel for me, and I love it. So let's keep that, as part of our thing here.
Thank you, kind sir. And I'm not going to have last words. I'm just going to wrap it up. Really, that's all the time we have. We're at 1 hour and 13 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. What a fantastic evening. And again, as we always do, we thank our listeners. We thank our beautiful panel. These guys are fantastic. Cheryl, Dave, Drew, Kent, Nick, Sheila, and Robin. It's been an absolute pleasure spending all this time with you. And I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I had a great time.
But I look forward to this. No matter how much work and research, it's fun doing this. I got to do it. So let's pick up whatever is left in your little dram. I finished my bottle, by the way. I told you I would. But we did. As always.
I'm moving the bourbon.
Beautiful. I've got some bourbon tonight. We're going to the after dram, and no one else gets to be there but the people on panel.
Crazy.
Here's the good company. Here's the good whiskey. Here's the good books. Here's the good conversation. And here's to seeing you all next week, Saturday, December 19th, for our 6th book, 2nd edition of the... we got to hold it up. Sorry.
Oh, shit.
This one right there. The complete whiskey course, a comprehensive tasting school in 10 classes. We'll be reviewing class 3 and class 4 with the author right over there, Robin Robinson. And again, I always say this final note, you don't want to miss a minute. Like, subscribe, and we're out of here. So all of you, sláinte, and thank you all very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, disinfect, don't touch people, don't go outside, stay in your house, and we're all fantastic. Thank you very much. Cheers.